Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter Rise, and today we're going to be starting my weapon preview series for this title. Now, I should mention that this series is not intended to work as a guide because, like I mentioned in my intro video, I feel like we're barely going to be scratching the surface when it comes to the potential of these weapons with the stuff that we have in the demo. One of the reasons behind that is because if you look at the trailers, you'll notice that the Gunlance has a specific Silkbind move that kind of propels the hunter towards the monster by attaching itself to its leg, and it does like a sweeping attack, and that particular move is not available in the demo. There are other moves like the Insect Glaive's downward thrust, also not available in this demo. So I do feel like there's still a lot to be learned about these weapons, and I wouldn't want to make a guide based on the limited availability of information that we have at this point. So the purpose of this series is just to get you a feel of what the weapon can do with the moves that are available to us in this demo. So just keep in mind, if your weapon of choice, you look at it and you play it and you're like, man, this feels weak, man, there's something wrong with this, most likely things are going to change before the actual game comes out because Capcom's going to be getting feedback from people actually playing the game. They're going to be looking at streams and what people are talking about, probably going to be making adjustments, and there's still features that we don't have access to. Now, all of those disclaimers out of the way, let's get to it. Today, we're going to be starting things off with my personal favorite weapon in Monster Hunter, which is the Gunlance. So, what can we expect from the Gunlance? Well, for starters, let's talk about hops, because that is a very important thing. Any Gunlance main will know that, you live and die in this weapon by how good you are at hopping around the monster. So first things first, we have forward hop, just like we used to have back in Monster Hunter World. This was a thing that was introduced in Monster Hunter World, and for one, I'm super happy that it stayed. They do feel like they're shorter because the back hops, I don't know. I haven't really judged the distance too much, but the animation makes it feel like it's a little bit shorter. But then again, usually I always have a Vade extender, and I don't know what skills are in this actual set because we don't have access to looking at the armor pieces or the Gunlance or anything like that. One thing that I can tell you is that this is different than the one that they've shown in the weapon showcase videos because we have 6 shells in this particular Gunlance, which would usually indicate a normal shelling Gunlance with the magazine decoration for World or load up in previous Monster Hunter games. Now, I don't know if the set that we have equipped comes with natural load up or if there's something going on that Gunlance could potentially just have load up as a base skill. We don't know what is happening there. But it does kind of put to rest the theory that Chaos Slayer had, that we were going to have like a universal shelling style. That is not going to be the case, as a matter of fact, because if we go into the hunter's notes for this weapon, it actually tells us that the wide shelling type adds a stun value to the worm stake cannon. So there's wide shelling, so I think it's safe to assume that there's going to be normal shelling, wide shelling, and long shelling, and they're going to act differently. And I do like the fact that at least they're differentiating it by adding like some kind of special stun value if you use worm stake with wide shelling. And while we're on the topic of worm stake, one of the things that everybody was talking about when they saw the weapon showcase, like, oh my god, the worm stake is faster. Boy, do I have some bad news for you. The worm stake animation not only is not faster in most situations, it almost feels like it actually takes longer. So for instance, if we go the usual route of double shell and then worm stake, you get this. Now that is slow. At least as slow as it was in World, if not even a little bit slower. I'm not going to be doing frame-by-frame comparisons because I don't think it's going to make a lot of sense because some of this stuff might even be getting adjusted. Same thing if you go from the slam combo. It's going to be about the same time. You guys are like, but Rurikhan, I saw it in the trailer. It was different. It was faster. And you are right. It is faster if you do it from a charged shell, which the way that it works is after you do a charged shell, if you hold back on the left analog stick relative to the position of your character and the shell button, then it will do a worm stake, and that particular worm stake is significantly faster. So let's go into a charged shell. And there's the animation for the faster worm stake. This only works, as of this demo, it only works for charged shells. Also notice something very interesting. You can do charged shells from the get-go. You no longer need to do, like in the previous games, you had to like poke and then charged shell, or you had to shell and then charged shell. In this game, you can go straight into charged shells. You just hold down the shelling button and boom, out comes a charged shell. And you can fire as many charged shells as you want. You can even fire them from the air, but we'll talk more about that in a bit, okay? But basically, yeah, when it comes to the worm stake, personally, I was very disappointed that it's still a move that requires a tremendous amount of commitment when you're trying to do it organically through your combos, but it is significantly faster if you do it from a charged shell. So I think people are going. I think that the purpose here is to incentivize people to use. I mean, maybe I don't know. I'm just trying to get at what their purpose was with this, and maybe it was to incentivize people to use charged shells with different styles as opposed to only using it with the long shelling style. But I don't know if that is the case or not because it's not like I have an insight to the minds of the creators. But yeah, that is shells. So now you can still do full bursts very much after every slam. And speaking of slam is a little bit different. Now you used to be able to jump off of ledges and hold down triangle and circle when it comes to the PlayStation controls, which in the Switch would be X and A. And that would allow you to do a slam after you leaped off. No longer. That is not going to be the case anymore. However, if you do your charging thrust, so this move, off of a ledge, you still get the slam. So let me see if I can get this right. Yep, there it is. There's a slam. That slam, you can follow it up with any of the moves that you used to be able to follow up with the Gunlance. So you can go into full burst, you can go into sweep, and then you can reload and just resume your usual combos, right? But you guys are like, but I wanted the slam from a running thing, because sometimes you're running and you want to get some distance to try and slam on the monster from here. So here's an interesting new thing. That is where aerial shelling comes into play. Now, if you jump off of the ledge, usually you have two options. You can press X and you get the thrust. And in the other game, you could press X and A and you would get the slam. That doesn't work anymore, but you can block and you shell. So if you jump off of the ledge and you block, that's going to give you access to shell. Aerial shelling is actually very cool, but not necessarily super useful. Basically, any point that you can shell in the air, you can basically fly, and then you can finish it with a slam. So this is actually cool if you have like flying monsters and you can time your stuff appropriately. Like for instance, I shelled the crap out of a Rathian while she was in the air, and that did feel pretty good. It's going to feel even better if you do this with wide shelling because, those shells are going to actually deal way more damage. But what if I told you that you can still access the slam after doing this? If you jump off a ledge, shell, and then you press the attack button, you still go into a slam, and you can still go into full burst and do all of the other combos. So technically speaking, you can still go into a slam by jumping off of a ledge if you just hit block and then hit attack, and then you can go full burst. Bob's your uncle. Now, another important thing is you can do this when you're jumping off of anything. So you can do this by jumping off of your Palamute as well. So you're running, jump off the Palamute, shell, slam, bam. Okay? You can also do this by using the wire bug. So if your weapon is sheathed, use the wire bug by pressing ZL and X. You can then shell while in the air and slam. So you can jump into the action like that with a slam, which was one of the first things that I was trying to figure out. Another thing that you can also do is if you waste all of your shells, or let's just say you don't have any shells available to you, then when you block by jumping up, you're going to just slam. So that's another way to get access to slam. If you don't have any shells and you jump off of a ledge and you press block, it will slam. But it will not reload. Remember how this move used to reload back in World? According to this demo, it will not do that. So if you want to reload, you have to do it manually. And speaking of reload, another important thing is you can no longer dodge into a reload. I mean, you used to be able to basically dodge sideways and press the shelling, dodge in any direction really, and press the shelling button, and it would instantly reload. Doesn't work anymore. But you can still do it the old-fashioned way. So you dodge sideways and you press the reload button. It still works, right? If you hold the blocking and the usual reload method. If you just hold block, and it still reloads. But it doesn't automatically reload if you just dodge and hit shell. Now, some of you will be like, well, why would they do that? That seems like such a terrible move. But me, a connoisseur of the long shelling gunlance, I'm like, thank God. You guys have no idea how many times you would want to do something like dodge sideways and do a charged shell, and you couldn't. And now you can. Like, oh, look at that. Charged shell. Charged shell. Dodge backwards. Charged shell. So this is a huge boon for charged shelling, for long shelling. Okay? So all of you long shellers out there, big ups right there. Because we used to want to do these things and we couldn't. Like, oh, I just want to dodge sideways and then do a charged shell. You couldn't do that. Okay? So personally, I'm super happy about that change. It's going to take a little bit of getting used to because you were used to basically just like dodging and shelling, and now a shell comes out and you're like, why can't I reload? But after you play just a little bit with it, you're going to get used to it pretty darn fast. That is what I can tell you. So these are some of the things that I've learned by playing the Gunlance. I might be missing a couple of things here and there, but let's also talk naturally about the silkbind techniques that we do have available to us. So one of them is a counter. This is the one that is available by pressing ZL and A. So if you press ZL and A, you get this. And I should tell you guys, like I said, this is subject to change. There's still a lot that we don't know about how the weapons are going to work in the final game. But me and Gaijin were talking about this, and we did feel that this particular counter it feels a little bit unfair. Why does it feel unfair? Because what does this counter actually do for you, right? This is essentially a guard point. I mean, look at how long it lasts. This is how long it lasts. You can't like do it any longer than that. As far as I'm aware, even if you hold down the button or whatever, it doesn't last any longer. Let me just recharge my wire bugs here. So like even if I hold the button down, it's not like it lasts longer. Like that's the time that you have to counter the move. The charge blade also happens to have a counter move, and it lasts about 3 times as long as this one. And it fills the entirety of their files, whereas this one gives you like 3 units of sharpness or something like that. Like I look at there and I see like it's about 3 millimeters of gauge when this thing actually lands. Now, you can combo from this into other moves if you get hit. I'm not sure if I'm going to have footage of that available because I have a lot of videos that I got to record, but you can combo from this into a slam, into a full burst, so it is very satisfying to pull off. And I was getting better at countering monsters with it, and it feels great when you pull off the counter. 100%. Feels friggin' fantastic. But when you look at the one from the charge blade, you are left a little bit like, I don't know how I feel about this. But anyway, that's one of the silk moves that we have available to us. Now, before we go into the next Silkbind move, I should do a quick Wyvern Fire because the next Silkbind move also messes with the cooldown of Wyvern Fire. And also, Wyvern Fire now has a cooldown indicator below the worm stake. If you look on the top left-hand side, you'll notice that Wyvern Fire is represented by that little orange bar, and the cooldown is basically when the orange bar is over, you're ready for another Wyvern Fire. And it's actually really nice that we get a gauge to know when Wyvern Fire is up because, sometimes you can get distracted in the middle of a hunt and you even forget that, oh, right, I can do Wyvern Fire now again and some gun lances are not as easy to see as others. A good example would be Raging Brachydios Gunlance in World was, in my opinion, quite challenging to see in the middle of the action whether or not it was ready to do Wyvern Fire. So having that gauge there is definitely useful. Another interesting thing while we're on the subject of Wyvern Fire is you can block while Wyvern Firing now. Whenever you Wyvern Fire, it counts as you being in a block position. However, that block does not give you any bonus guard. So if a monster hits you enough to cause you to stagger backwards, then it cancels out your Wyvern Fire, but it doesn't trigger the cooldown. So that's nice, but ultimately this is going to be something that, you know, blocking while Wyvern firing is going to be something that if you actually want to get the Wyvern fire off is only really going to be viable if you're bringing some guard into your build. Otherwise, it's just there to prevent you from getting smacked in your face, you know, or if the monster is doing weak attacks or whatever, you'll still be able to get the Wyvern Fire off. But in most of the situations that I tried guarding through it with the set that we have here, I actually just got sent staggering back. And, you know, I didn't take damage, but I didn't get the Wyvern Fire off either. So it doesn't give you any bonus guard, basically. But anyway, as I was saying, the other Silkbind move that we have is the one that uses 2 wire bugs, launches you up into the air, and slams, and that gives you access to the full range of combos that you usually get after the slam, right? So that is really good, and it reloads all of your shells. So if you happen to be at a point where you just did a full burst, you can just do this, reloads all of your shells, and slam on down. But that's not all you can do with this, because as I mentioned earlier, we now have access to aerial shelling, right? Like I showed you guys, you can jump off of a ledge and just shell your way into oblivion. Like so. Whee! Right? So because you have access to aerial shelling now, if you do this move and spam the shelling button, you can get quite a bit of airtime. And this is particularly cool, like if you have an annoying flying monster that just keeps flying above you and you're able to get right below. I mean, it's going to be situational, right? But if you're able to just get on the right spot and you just go like, come here, you little bastard. Bang, bang. Oh, wait. Oh, I messed it up. The timing on it is something that I still need to get more practice because, as you can imagine, this is a very situational move. But when you can pull it off, it is very satisfying. Just shell the crap out of a monster. And like I also said, it's going to be something that's going to work much better when we get access to wide shelling and even long shelling, because you can also long shell in the air. I don't know if you'll be able to like long shell twice if we get stuff like focus, but right now you can do this and then you can... That was a charged shell right there. I'm not sure if you guys could tell, but like that was a charged shell. As a matter of fact, I can just do, give me a second. I can actually launch this into the air significantly higher. And then there's the charged shell right there. So you can even do charged shells off of the air. Now it will be interesting to see how high we can go and whether or not you can do 2 charged shells off of the air. But yeah, if you're able to pull this move off and just shell a flying monster out of the air, like that will be tremendously fun. And do keep in mind, you don't have to spam shells like I'm doing, so you can actually do it with more precision. If your target is like just flying static in the air, you can go like shell, 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 and maintain your height. And then at the end you can slam. It's just a shame that the slam doesn't reload anymore. But yeah. That's the Gunlance in a nutshell for Monster Hunter Rise. And so far, personally, I'm loving it. There are a couple of things that I'm still concerned with. Obviously, like the limitations on the block. I find that one still a little bit cumbersome to use depending on the situation itself. But that could be something that with practice it becomes better. As well as the fact that, you know, you still don't have like... I was just really hoping still for universal shelling when they showed us the set with the 4 shells. I was like, oh my god, are we going to have like, you know, just 4 shells and everything works? But, you know, there's still a lot to discover with this weapon, as with pretty much every weapon. The other thing is naturally, like, I really wish the Wormstake Cannon was fast for every application, as opposed to it only being fast for the charged shells. But, you know, it is what it is. You got to take the good with the bad. And I think that there's still quite a few surprises left for us when it comes to the Gunlance. But anyway, that's long enough. This is probably going to be the longest of the weapon previews because, as you guys know, this is my favorite weapon. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit it up with a like. If you did not enjoy it, hit it up with a dislike. Feedback is important. If you usually enjoy the content, subscribe with the bell notification icon and all of that stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.
くわよ。